Hello! Today I would like to speak about routine in language learning. I've touched on routine in different videos, but today I would like to talk a bit more specifically about your language learning routine. And hopefully this video will help you establish or perhaps improve a language learning routine for yourself. Okay? So here are my primary considerations. First one, I think that you should always really try to go for frequency. If you can do even just 15 minutes a day, every day, that is great. If you take long breaks, let's say 3-4 days in your language learning, you lose momentum, you lose inertia, and I think that can be a bit detrimental for language learning. Some learners won't feel that way. They like longer breaks, and that's okay if it works for them. But at least for myself and for a lot of my students, I feel that I just find it better to try to minimize breaks. I even think that perhaps 5 times a week or 5 days a week is fine as well. If you want to take a couple days off, that's okay. But I think that if you can do even just get your feet a bit wet every day, that is beneficial. Perhaps if you don't have a lot of time and if you're really busy during certain days, there should still be some time, like 15 minutes, perhaps at a coffee shop or during lunch, during breakfast, or before going to bed, whatever, for you to perhaps pick up your phone and do, for instance, flashcard reviews in an app. Perhaps you can do 15 minutes of Duolingo or Memrise, which are popular apps, or perhaps listen to a foreign language podcast on Link. Whatever it is, if you can do 15 minutes in a really busy day, that you're going to be doing yourself a good favor. If you are more serious about language learning and if you have more time, ideally you're going to be doing, at least an hour a day in the days in which you can. I think that if you can spend a good solid hour language learning, as often as possible, that is gonna really promote good progress. Of course, the more the merrier. If you can do even more than an hour a day, perhaps on the weekends, then that's great as well. But I think that something really important is that avoid excesses as well, because if we overload ourselves with content or with learning, we may get overwhelmed, and getting overwhelmed can lead us to burnout. And when we burn out, we can take longer breaks, which are detrimental, to language learning and progress. So I think if you have time and you feel like it and you want to put a ton of effort into language learning, that's great. But just try not to burn yourself out. Now, another concept. Let's talk about alternation. I really like alternating basically everything in language learning. Okay, so and what do I mean by this? I mean in terms of methods. So I like to use normally one or two, actually, or in fact, 2 or 3 programs as I tackle a single language. Programs or methods, for instance, you can try to do, let's say, half an hour of Duolingo, then half an hour of Link in one day. Next day, do half an hour of Link, and then half an hour of Pimsleur. And if you alternate the programs, it's harder for you to get bored, and it's easier for you to stay. It's easier to stay interested in the process itself and in the language itself. There are some people that like to stick with just one method, perhaps one language textbook or one program, Rosetta Stone or just Link or just whatever it is, or just Duolingo, and that's okay. But I personally believe that you're just going to progress a lot more if you alternate methods and programs. I think there's nothing wrong in having one main one, right? Perhaps you're going to focus just on Duolingo until you finish it, and then do different things on the side as well. But I think that ideally you're going to be alternating a few different programs. And another thing that I like to try to alternate as well is just how active I am doing the language learning. Perhaps I'll do half an hour or an hour very active learning, perhaps exercises or a program that I'm really engaged in, and then half an hour or an hour of more passive learning. Perhaps I'll just be, listening somewhat passively to the content without being very engaged. That way, I'm less likely to burn out, and then I can also extend my my time or my exposure to the language itself, which I think is really important. So, so I think that alternating programs and engagement levels can really help in language learning as well. And finally, I think that it's really important whenever we're trying to create a routine for ourselves. It's just important to be realistic. If we're not realistic, and if we just say, oh, hey, I'm just going to do 3 hours of language learning every day, when we realize that that won't be possible and that won't happen, that will be just detrimental and discouraging, right? So I think that it's important to respect our own boundaries, try to understand what works for us, and that way we can come up with a plan or a routine that will really work. And also, one last point I think that I would like to suggest to everyone, that try to incorporate into your routine at least half an hour a week or so to find new resources, fresh resources for you to stay highly interested in the language you're learning. It could be perhaps you can try to find different new songs that you're going to enjoy in the language you're learning, a new podcast, and just fresh material that you're going to enjoy basically working with and trying to learn from. So there you go. I hope that these points will be helpful to everyone, and good luck, my friends, learning a new language.